Welcome into the Playing in the Sandbox podcast, where we are deeply committed to inspiring action in today's leaders. And in today's Sandbox episode, I want you to get ready to tackle those hard conversations with confidence. So kick off your shoes and let's step into the sandbox. Let's dig our toes in and get comfy and get going on a topic that is near and dear to my heart. It's something that I learned to master years ago when I was not so good at communication, especially in conflict. I was horrible at it. Let's be real. I wore my emotions on my sleeve and my face, and they got the best of me 9 times out of 10. And it was through some really difficult learning moments where I started to see, maybe I need to check how I'm entering into these difficult conversations with people versus accusing or being frustrated because how the other person is reacting to my face or my emotions that I'm wearing on my sleeve. Can I get an amen on that? So when I learned how to tackle these, as I most commonly call them or refer to them as bold conversations, it was a game changer for me, not just for me as an individual, but on my own leadership path as well. And now I have some easy to apply action steps for you to get a hold of today for your leadership, your life, and even in your family. You're going to want to head over and get the action plan for today's episode. So get on over to tammyjbond.com/podcast. Click on this episode and download your copy of the action plan because I've got more tools, tips, and strategies in there for how to get more comfortable with navigating these difficult, hard, and even bold conversation. It's filled with a lot of great tools. So head on over tammyjbond.com/podcast and click on this episode. So, all right, let's get ready. Get your pen and paper. Are you comfy? You ready to go? Let's get started. All right. So excited to dive into this conversation. And I want you to be ready in your mind and in your heart. I want you to be ready to tackle hard conversations with confidence and conviction today. We're going to learn how. I'm going to step by step take you through the process of how to do it. And with the right preparation, you can make sure that these conversations are productive and don't leave any lingering resentment between you and the other person. So a lot of times it's funny when people come to me because I love this topic and I help and coach leaders all the time, multiple times a week on how to have these and tackle these difficult conversations, having bold conversations, as you know, I like to call them. Well, we've got to unpack with folks first what the causes are for these conversations. And it starts with a leadership issue of unmet expectations, lack of clear expectations all around, disappointment in behaviors or performance. And most of the time, it truly is an utter breakdown and lack of communication all around. So when we're not effectively communicating as leaders, the expectations that we have for our people, we get frustrated. They know they've failed, but they don't understand why they've failed. And then all of a sudden we need to have a hard conversation. And if you just go back to the very beginning of setting the expectations, the clarity of expectations and ensuring that everybody hears that what the expectations are and what is needed from them and the by when of those, you're going to clear up right out of the gate a lot of these difficult conversations that you need to have and tackle, because what's causing it is you failing to effectively communicate up front. Not all the time. Let me be clear. There's no blame here. But whether you are the CEO, the director, the manager, or the lowest person on the org chart, you will encounter the need to have hard conversations. So today, let's prepare you for exactly how to have them. Now, I'm going to cover in a future episode, I promise you, when you know they are needed, right? So how to identify when they're needed. But right now, I'm just going to get to the pain point and rip the Band-Aid off and say, look, we know we've got to have some difficult conversations because of the issues that are bubbling up in the workplace. So while I'm working backwards on this, the why I'm working backwards is because I'd rather give you some new tools now to get you moving forward versus keep talking to you about the fact that these conversations are necessary. So I've already covered why they happen or why they need to happen, the fail points there. Some of them, we'll go into a future episode into more detail on that, but you know when an issue is in front of you and you know when an issue has turned from a molehill to a mountain. They're the things that people keep tripping over in the front door of the office every single day, or keep tripping over when they're trying to get on that Zoom call with you, but their avoidant behavior is getting in their way. You just have refused to address it head on, friend. And today that changes. So I want you to write down on your notepad, I want you to write down 1, 2, and 3. I'm going through a lot of steps today on this process, but I want you to write out 3 things. You're going to capture 3 things by the end of this episode today that you're going to want to apply, try, and implement immediately. So write down 1, 2, 3 and get ready, because I'm going to come at you with a lot of information. I'm pretty sure you're going to have more than 3, but commit to 3 for yourself so that you can be part of the change for your future. So let's get into it. I'm not going to waste any more time. Here is your step-by-step process for preparing yourself to tackle hard and uncomfortable conversations in the workplace. Number 1, I want you to learn to recognize when a conversation is becoming difficult or unproductive. Okay. When a conversation is on repeat and the person on the other side of that conversation is on mute, you have a problem to address. You want to recognize when it's now become unproductive. Okay. When you're in the middle of tackling a difficult conversation and the person is non-responsive, well, that tells me that we've now moved into an unproductive territory. And how do you handle that? You want to ask some questions at that point and be willing to listen. But by learning to recognize when a conversation is becoming difficult or unproductive, it's going to help you stay on track and ensure that the conversation moves forward in a positive direction. So that's a really key step in this process. We can have these bold conversations and then they just continue to escalate because we're not aware, oh, wait, we've turned a corner. Here's a little insider tip. When you launch into these conversations, set the ground rules with folks up front of what's needed, expected, how each other are going to participate in it, give permission to take a timeout if needed, right? Get those ground rules established up front so that then when you get into the dialogue and you recognize that it's becoming unproductive, you're now going to know some new steps to be able to implement to get it back on track. Okay. But you got to understand first what's happening on the other side, the view from the other person's chair. And then want you to just really make certain that you are willing to listen, right? As well as talk. And that becomes one of the ground rules that we set with people. I want us to all be willing to listen as well as talk. If we need to have a little egg timer, y'all, and put it in there and give everybody that 3-minute egg, like my grandma used to have, she had an egg timer on the top of her stove. And it's like, okay, talk to him for 3 minutes, go. Seriously, I know that happened when I was a kid because I was a talker. But you got to give them a time, right? And be in agreement that we're both going to honor that and no interrupting, right? It may be tempting to just try to get your point out and push your point across the table, but it's really important to pause and hear what the other person has to say. And that comes with asking questions. What did you hear me say? What more do you need? Am I clear? What's your response to that? What is your feeling about that, right? That's part of the next step, which is be honest and open about your feelings, but also be understanding and respectful of the other person's point of view. When we have conflict continue in these difficult conversations, it's because we've disrespected someone in the middle of it. We most likely haven't heard them, or they don't feel that you received what they had to say and you moved past it. You didn't acknowledge their point of view and perspective. It doesn't make it right. It makes it that you heard it. And that's really key in navigating these difficult conversations. And I want to say this. One of the easiest things that you can do before you even have one of these conversations is to reach out to a friend or a colleague for advice and support. I call these at times whine 1-1 calls. I'm going to call you and I just need to do a whine 1-1 with you for a few moments so that I can clear my head what mostly has me frustrated, but then work to create what do I want instead? The if not this, then what that you've heard me talk about. What do I want instead of this situation with this person? And don't be afraid to ask for help when you make that, phone a friend call. It's okay when you're navigating tough conversations to also acknowledge I don't have all of the skills that it takes. I'm learning these skills and I need help. How might I approach it in a way that's healthy and constructive? Because it can be immensely helpful for you to have someone else's perspective on your situation. I mean, by a show of hands, friend, how many times have you been in a situation where your perspective clouded the entire conversation and you couldn't hear anybody else? But then when you finally, someone that you respected spoke up, and you heard their perspective of what was happening, it shifted you. You realized you were locked on to an outcome that you wanted, but then you heard a different perspective and it shifted yours and it helped you to do a different approach, right? That's why phoning a friend before we even tackle some of these difficult conversations for that 111, that's why it can be so helpful also. Okay. It shifts your perspective when you're open to it. But again, now I have to say this on the 111. I should probably do a future episode on 111 and what that is. It's a very valuable tool, but it comes with a time limit. Remember that egg timer? I think everybody just needs a little egg timer. Here's my egg timer, 3-minute egg, go, whine, right? Get it out. Say what you need to say. What my favorite question is at the end, and what else do you need to say to be complete? Say that again, Tam. What else do you need to say to be complete? And that's really important. Little other side note here, when someone comes to you to do a 111 and you insert that question, it reframes in their mind. It puts the picture in their mind. Oh, I want to be complete with this. I'm good. That's all. Or no, I actually have 2 more points I'd like to say. Good. Say them. Go. Bottom line it. Right. This isn't an all day, half day, a lunch break, or even a 15-minute break conversation. It is a 3-minute egg timer conversation, right? The 111. Now, when you're going back into tackle these difficult conversations, the idea is to, not the idea, the want is to always be practicing active listening. And this means really taking the time to listen to what the other person is saying and to listen to what you're seeing in their body language without letting yourself get distracted or sidetracked by your own thoughts and reactions. See, we can have our own thoughts and reactions and we immediately go into problem solving. That's probably one of the biggest challenges that I have. When I learned the skill, when I went through my executive coaching certification program years ago, active listening actually was a game changer for me, but it was also really challenging because I'm a fixer in my mind and I go to solutions first. I hear a problem and I'm right in solution. Well, when you're in resolving a conflict, I can't go to solution for another person who's bringing me the conflict. I've got to stay neutral, be active in my listening and engaged with what the person is saying to me so I can seek to understand the view from their chair and then ask questions to understand it more deeply. Then together we can co-create what a solution is. So that active listening is not me or not you, friend, going right into, I'm going to solve this problem because I got to move on. It takes a hot minute. It takes some time. You'll get better and more efficient at it, but active listening is key. And when I inserted at the beginning of that about active listening and practicing it and the body language, you want to be checking in on the body language. You want to be checking in to say, what am I noticing in your expression and your body language right now? I noticed that your arm, you said this and you crossed your arms. Tell me what that feeling is for you. You can check in with that. That's digging deeper to seek to understand, to uproot the pain of the conversation and get clear on the what we need and want as an outcome. Okay. So please practice active listening. There are great tools and books, and I've got some in the action plan for you. I will list them out. They're listed out for you in the action plan of great active listening tools that you can apply with your team. They're great team exercises as well. So here's one of the most key for both parties, and it starts with our ground rules and it moves on through as we're navigating these conversations. Remember to stay respectful, friend, and professional throughout, even if the conversation gets heated. Keep your focus on finding a resolution instead of attacking each other. Take it off the person or the personality and put it to the behavior and the topic. Not the personality, but the behavior and or the subject matter, the topic, the thing, that molehill that turned into the mountain. That's what we want to focus on. Oftentimes when we get frustrated and we allow our emotions to come up, what happens? Well, it's because we got focused on the person and the personality of what was being said instead of focusing on the issue that they brought forward. And listen, if emotions run high, take a time out. It's totally okay to give both parties time to cool down and to reflect on the conversation. 100%. And they say a confused mind doesn't buy, right? We've all heard that. Well, I say a hijacked brain doesn't look for solutions. So if emotions are running high, my brain is hijacked in my emotions. I'm now blaming, I'm pointing fingers, I'm looking for excuses, I'm looking for a way out. I'm not looking for solutions. So remember that. If a confused mind doesn't buy, a hijacked brain doesn't look for solutions. All right. Here's the next step. During the conversation, I want you to take notes so that you can make sure both parties should take notes so that y'all can make sure that you're understanding each other correctly and you understand what's being expected of you and you can follow up. Now, side note, friend, these are not notes to use as weapons later. You said this because everything that is said in this conversation that you're going to tackle, you're going to leave with a solution, and everything that was said is left behind. The only thing that goes out the door is the solution and the next steps forward. So if people come in and they're emotional and they're frustrated and you need to take that time out because the emotions have run high and you set the agreement, we're coming back in 20 minutes and we're going to pick up to get toward a solution here. Everything that happened before, it's not a, well, you did and you always and you never. No way. Friend, we don't paint those conversations with one color paintbrush. We navigate them from a position of strength and health, and we navigate them from a position of holding each other in the highest possible regard and seeking to understand for the outcomes that we want to produce that's healthy for all, right? So taking notes is not weaponizing. Taking notes is making sure that in our emotional state, as those emotions come up, if I can take notes it helps me to reflect back and hear, and then follow up with the individual in my question and asking time. I can follow up with them about the things that, clued in on. Because especially when we're going on a timer situation of who talks, and we're not interrupting because we're being professional and courteous, I want to make notes of the questions I want to ask instead of trying to remember them. Because then when we do that, we add pressure in our brain, and the emotions that are already there can get heightened because I forgot what I was going to say and I know it was so important. It's okay to take notes during the conversation, but encourage both of each of you to do it. And again, that would be a great ground rule to set in the beginning, that we're going to take notes to refer to during the conversation. And then we'll have the notes that we're going to walk out the door with that we can refer back to later, right? So we can refer back to the key points that we were changing and that we were addressing. Now, I talked about active listening, asking clarifying questions throughout this process and throughout this conversation, actively seeking out more information so that you can ensure that both of you are on the same page is key to your success. Ask clarifying questions. Help me understand. I'm unclear. When this happened and you say you felt this way, what did you need from me? What more do you need from me? Remember my question I said about what do you need from me what do you need to say to be complete? You can insert that in this conversation as well. The goal of having these difficult conversations, bold conversations, tackling them up front so that they don't build momentum in the workplace, agreeing to a solution together and then leaving it in the room and only revisiting it together, not going out and gossiping about it, is key to the success of the health of the team. Okay. But you, as the leader, friend, you want to model these behaviors. And the asking of clarifying questions creates a safe place where people can start to open up. Asking clarifying questions that are not, why did you? That's not a clarifying question. How come you? That's not a clarifying question. Why did you not, or why didn't you? That's not a good clarifying question, because that immediately points blame. I've said it before. My favorite 3 words are help me understand. It's a great way to understand and to let the other individual know that you are seeking to understand about what's going on. I am a firm believer in effective communication is a 2-way street. It's 50-50. I'm half responsible for what I say, and I'm half responsible for how you receive what I say. Right. And when we learn that model, I write about it in the Playing in the Sandbox book. When we follow that model, we hear each other, we share what we need, but we're also asking those clarifying questions to seek to understand when we don't from the other individual. That's part of our responsibility in effective communication. It's not just saying what I need to say and saying, oh, yeah, I heard you. Okay, we have an agreement, and you move on. But really, there was no clarifying questions that were asked to ensure that we are both on the same page. So as you're rounding out your conversation, you're asking the clarifying questions to really get on the same page, to get to the resolution that you're looking for. I want you to summarize what was said and make sure that everyone is in agreement before moving on. And it's the Here's what I heard you say. Here's what I heard you asking for, because we always come in with a solution focus, right? We want to come in solution focus. It's fine to bring a problem, but with that problem, follow up with a solution, right? So summarize what you've heard and get into agreement. And if it's something that's a sticking point for you, find the compromise. Be willing to compromise and find solutions that will work for both parties. Because when we just get it's my way or the highway, or I'm stuck on my point and it can only be this way, we create issues bigger than the one that was brought in just because we don't look like we are a team player. And as the leader, again, another critical area to model for your team. As the director, the manager, the CEO, it's very, as senior VP, C-suite, wherever you are, it's very important that you model these behaviors from a position of strength and health, because this is how we want our team to behave. This is how we want people to show up in the workplace. And I don't care if you're a remote worker, I don't care if you're in the office every day. These conversations need to happen more. They've got to happen on the front side, not the back side. They should happen the first time you hear you want to have a check-in. You have the check-in, not 5 times after the same behavior has continued to happen, or the issue has gotten down to where you're hearing it from others in the office because it was unresolved. You want to have them early on, right? You want to find that position of compromise after you've gone through the process, and then be willing to find solutions for both parties that will work for both parties. That's where that, you know, compromise comes in, right? So, as you're finding those creative solutions that work for both parties, I also want you to not be afraid to think outside the proverbial box, right? Because it can help you come up with unique ways to be mutually, or that would be mutually beneficial for solutions for both parties. And they may help you to realize things that you wouldn't have considered otherwise. So get creative with it. Just like I said back in the beginning, when you phone a friend to ask for help before you have the difficult conversation, right? To make sure you got all your talking points clear. This is that same thing. You want to get creative together, and if you're the leader and it's one of your subordinates that's coming in to have this conversation with you, my request, my invitation for you is you ask them for their creative solutions and you be open to it. And then you say, well, here's some thoughts that I have. Where do we find the middle on this? Or how do we navigate through it? And I know there's people right now, and you're shouting me down. You're saying, Tam, there are just sometimes that there are no solutions except my way. Like that's it, because they don't understand the bigger picture. You're right. But your obligation and responsibility is to explain that to them, not in a way of slamming your fist on the desk or getting direct and abrasive in your tone. It's looking at them across the table, say their name to them, tell them you heard, and repeat back what you heard them say and ask and request. Respect them by telling them thank you for having the conversation and the dialogue with you and coming prepared with a solution. And let them know there are other things at play, that unfortunately that specific solution is not an option. But I'd like to keep talking with you about how to create a solution for you that you're going to feel good with. But that one is off the table, unfortunately, because of things I'm not at liberty, as the leader of the company or organization or team, I'm not at liberty to share that with you. If I were, I would. And friend, if you can share the details, do share the details. But let them know, instead of just saying, no, that's just not an option, because I said that's not an option. That's just going to kill the whole thing. And the whole conversation is now that little molehill that turned into the mountain has now turned into a volcano. Let's be real. So, all right. So get creative with your solutions and communicate what is and what is not, and what's possible and what is not, after you've been proactively open and thinking creatively for those solutions yourself. I want you to end the conversation as we come out to a close here. I want you to end the conversation on a positive note and make sure that both people are in agreement about how to move forward. This is going to ensure that everyone is clear, and what was discussed on what each person's expectations are very clear, right? And we know how we're going to navigate forward. We have a plan. And you're going to leave that room being in consensus together that we have a plan of how we're going to move forward after this. And you're going to acknowledge and thank the individual. And then here is perhaps one of the biggest keys to the success of all of this is follow up. I want you to follow up after the conversation. If you've initiated it, follow up. If it's one of your people, you're higher up in the organization, it's one of your team members that came to you, you follow up with them. I want you to be personally responsible for following up. If you took the issue to your boss and your boss isn't following up, be bold and say, hey, I just wanted to check in to ensure that we're good. I want to give you an update on what I'm putting into action after our conversation. And I want to thank you again for having that conversation. And this is going to help avoid any further friction in the future and provide a lasting solution for you and for your team members. So you can do it no matter where you're at. Remember, CEO, director, manager, lowest on the org chart, doesn't matter, newest employee, right? You too can also do the follow-up plan because it helps to ensure, again, that the solutions that we agreed to, we're putting into action and we're checking in on how we're feeling post those difficult conversations. So listen, to support you in navigating these follow-up conversations, my goal is to get you tools, right? To resource you on how to conduct effective meetings. Effective 20-minute check-ins is a great way to have as these follow-up conversations. So I've got a great tool over at the website for you at tammyjbond.com that you can get on how to conduct a 20-minute check-in with others. So finally, friend, here, I want you to remember, difficult conversations can be an opportunity for growth and understanding. And by approaching them with an open mind and respectful toward others, right? Toward the other person, show respect for the other person. You can learn a lot about yourself and how to be a better communicator in the future. That, friend, if you avoid these conversations, you're going to have landmines all over the office. And you're probably going to be losing people, not because, right, they don't leave bad companies, they leave bad bosses, because people don't respect folks who don't actually resolve conflicts in leadership positions. I hear this all the time from team members that they've lost respect because their boss, their leader, their manager is avoiding conflicts. They're avoiding having difficult conversations, and it causes a trust issue. It causes a safety issue in that psychological safety. If we're not going to, in a healthy way, address conflict, then it's not safe for me to be here and I'm out. And with all the challenges people are having with hiring and we talk about motivation, we talk about how to motivate our employees, we talk about how to, build cultures that are healthy cultures. A healthy culture is a culture that has difficult, bold conversations respectfully, honoring the people at the table. Hey, thank you so much for joining me in the sandbox today. I hope you got great tools from how to tackle hard conversations with confidence and conviction today in the sandbox. And my hope is that you're leaving ready to share some strategies as you navigate your personal leadership, your team leadership, and your next bold conversation. Hey, it would mean so much to me if you would share this episode with a friend or a colleague that you feel could really benefit from what we shared here today. Maybe listen to it at your next team meeting so that you get your team aligned on the same page as you about how to handle these hard conversations with confidence and conviction. And third-party affirmations go a long way in today's world economy. And I would be honored if you shared the value that you gained from spending time in the sandbox today. Head on out to wherever you listen and download this podcast. Leave a comment and share the value with others so that you can be someone forwarding the powerful messages that we share here in the sandbox. And don't forget to head to tammyjbond.com/podcast to let our team know that you want a copy of today's action plan. Just click on today's episode, and right there you can grab your copy, download your copy of today's action plan. There are more tips in there for you. And I've also got the resource of the 20-minute check-in there waiting for you as well. Now, remember, friend, leadership is not something that you're born with. It is something that you grow into. And thank you for taking the time to grow into your next level of leadership in the sandbox today. Make it a great day.